All right, Chris, thank you so much for bringing us to your studio here in Charlottesville. We're so excited to share your story, your social impact, your citizen moment, hopefully inspire the next generation of social entrepreneurs.
I'm really happy to have you here, dude. We don't get a lot of visitors, so this is great. Like I said, for once, an actual adult in the room, somebody mature who can lead the dialogue in this studio, so this is great.
My mom is very proud to hear that, I'm sure. So yeah, let's talk about your early life. So where did your commitment to service really start? What's the source of that?
Honestly, I think just being cognizant of the fact that I have certain privileges that other people don't. And like very simply, I really do believe that, when you have a leg up, you shouldn't feel bad about it, but what you should do is reach out and try to help people and try to level the playing field in ways that you can. And, my dad played in the NFL for a very long time, and I had everything I needed growing up, like went to a school like yours, had tutors, had, all the resources and that sort of thing. But I also was very aware that a generation ago, my dad's family didn't have those things. And my dad didn't have those things. So I think like the opportunities that I've had coupled with the context of having that opportunity and realizing that like if it wasn't for football, maybe like I'm facing a whole different set of challenges. So I think that, and just seeing my parents as I grew up committed to service, you talk about like your commitment, and my mom worked heavily in Boys and Girls Club, still does here. My dad was a Boys and Girls Club kid. So just seeing their commitment to service, my dad is a player, but really like my mom being an engine behind the scenes and kind of the entrepreneurial, fundraising type of stuff that she does, where it's like the creativity that it takes to fundraise and get people going and working with the Boys and Girls Club. I saw a lot of creativity from her. So I just took all that stuff from my parents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing to hear. Yeah. My parents definitely inspired me too to do all the work.
That's where the example starts, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, now as a parent, I'm like looking at my kids and I'm like, all right, well, I know how it happened for me. How can I make it happen for them?
Yeah. No, it's amazing. And, this goes without saying, but you've had an illustrious football career. You played in football, you played high school and college here in Charlottesville.
Yep.
At St. Anne's and University of Virginia. And then in 2008, you were drafted to the Rams, number 2 overall.
Yep.
Went on to play for the Patriots and the Eagles.
Yep.
Both teams with which you won Super Bowls, as we see right here.
Yeah, I got lucky.
And as a Birds fan, super, super grateful forever for that win.
Hey, that was awesome.
Yeah, that was definitely.
I certainly share it with anybody listening to this, because you're all Eagles fans, probably. Are there not like some kids who aren't Eagles fans at your high school? They go against the grain?
I mean, there are, but they definitely have a way tougher time making friends.
Okay. Yeah. That makes sense.
But obviously the Super Bowls are amazing. Your career was amazing.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
But we are not here to talk football.
Yeah.
Paralleling your football career have been your philanthropic pursuits.
Yeah, no question.
I guess to start, why did you and your wife Megan start the Chris Long Foundation?
Well, it's funny because we didn't start it until like year 6 for me, and I played 11, and it was like kind of in the middle of my career, 5 or 6 years in, and we always did a lot of stuff off the field, and I always wanted to do personally like things a little bit quieter, because I don't know, sometimes when you do good things, people can misconstrue them as you're doing them to get attention for doing them, and I think that is a fine line to walk. Like you're always going to get things personally good out of things you do off the field. Like your brand's going to improve, like people are going to pat you on the back. And I just didn't want it to be one of those things where people wondered why I was doing that. But when I did a little soul searching, I was kind of like, oh, this is silly to be so prideful about doing things quietly, because I'm leaving a lot of productivity on the table. And I think a lot of philanthropic movement, like in the right direction, comes from like involving a ton of people and getting a community involved. And one of the biggest tools we have now as players is social media, and like, realizing the power of like connecting with fans that way, and also just having this resource and knowing that like the average NFL career is 3 years. I'm sitting there year 5 or 6 and I'm saying to myself, like, I really should probably be engaging people more and inviting them to help me do whatever I'm doing. So it kind of timed up perfectly. I went to Tanzania to climb Mount Kilimanjaro with one of my teammates, and just kind of like had a life-changing trip. Anybody that lives in the United States for a long time, then travels for the first time. Like I didn't travel a lot growing up. I didn't travel a lot as a football player. So me leaving the country to expand my horizons culturally and just life experience wise yielded a really, I don't know, game changing experience for me. When I went over there, I climbed the mountain. I loved it. I had a great time, but I also saw like the disparity in how people live compared to here, and that delta in like comfort and really when it comes to clean water, the access to what I believe is, or I thought was a human right, which obviously isn't right now and should be. That access to clean water is so transformative for families, for communities. Of course, I didn't know that when I went there on that trip. And it was actually by happenstance that I ran into somebody on my way out that schooled me on, a way that I can get involved in Tanzania. When I left Tanzania for the first time after climbing Kili, I did not know how I wanted to help, but I'm a believer in like, if you go somewhere and somebody gives you something, that's probably a good place to start giving back. And when I came back and let it marinate for a bit, and I can tell you the long story there of how we arrived on water, but a lot of people's reception was like, why water? Doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Why over there? Why would you start in Tanzania? And I really think for anybody listening, like if you're passionate about trying to make a difference and you experience this paralysis of analysis by analysis where you for 2 years sit around and wonder like, where should I start? What's my cause? Like, I think there's time to be careful and kind of I don't know, develop a business plan, so to speak, in the philanthropic world. But what you need to do right away is figure out what you're good at and what you love doing, and you need to get to work doing something positive. So that was the aim there, and then it just grew into this huge thing.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And so at Citizen, we believe the most powerful way to share stories of positive social impact like yours is to focus on the citizen moment. And this is the point in your journey at which you committed to making an impact. So coming back from that trip, what was your citizen moment, or was it on that trip?
So it's funny. There's like a whole host of little, I don't know, like dominoes that led to us starting this deal. Last night in Tanzania, I was there with a teammate named James Hall. So we went to the hotel bar to have a beer because you're so tired. Like you can't have 3 beers. You have 1 beer and then you're like in bed.
Yeah.
You've been up at altitude for a week. Yeah. You're exhausted. You just got your first shower. But we were having a great time, and we were just kind of like 2 guys halfway around the world from St. Louis or playing in St. Louis, found ourselves in Tanzania, did this awesome thing, and we're at this bar, and somebody walks in, and I hear my name called, and I'm like, like that would be maybe something that would happen to me in St. Louis, but not in Tanzania. Yeah. I'm like, must be a different Chris. I turn around, and it's Joe Buck. Do you know who Joe Buck is? So Joe Buck's in Tanzania, and what's crazy. Funny is, I'll get out about that is, like, he is a Missouri guy, so I know him from St. Louis, but he also works with my pops. Yeah. So I'm like, what is Joe doing here? Well, he's over there to climb Kilimanjaro. What we just did with his daughter and this other gentleman that I'm introduced to named Doug Pitt, and Doug Pitt is the Goodwill ambassador to Tanzania, and they're over here for a water project. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Like, talk to me about that whole process. And they kind of lay out what the challenges are and what the results can be when you implement a clean water solution. But at that point, I've got 1 foot out the door getting ready to go home. I got an early flight in the morning. I can't go on their project the next day. They offered, of course, they're very gracious. If I told you honestly that when I walked out of that bar or got on the plane the next day that clean water was like my slam dunk, way to make a difference, I'd be lying. Like, it was in my head. I thought it was extremely, I don't know, it was, I'm trying to provocative. It was like a really provocative way that I think I could make a difference. And as somebody who I would consider myself a pragmatist, like, I really want to know how quickly I can make a difference, where the money is going to go. Like, I want that messaging to be very clear. It checked a lot of those boxes. When I got back to Missouri, I was sitting there with Doug Pitt working on another thing called Care to Learn. It was a school supply initiative. And we were at a restaurant. And on the TV was the Ice Bucket Challenge. You remember the Ice Bucket Challenge? And as we, with the backdrop of him painting a picture of how disparate the situation is in Tanzania, and of course that disparity between like the way we live and they live, and watching us just for a great cause dump gallons of water on people, and also coupled with the kind of like wildfire like effect that this this social media craze created
Yeah.
in fundraising, using social media, using athletes, I was like, man, not only do we have a lot of water and we're very lucky, and this just drives home the point that like, like we're living a much different reality than people I just visited a month ago, but also like look at the effect that a really carefully crafted social campaign can have on fundraising. So I love the niche of clean water. I love pragmatically what Doug was describing to me as far as the difference we can make. And I also was like, damn, here's an opportunity for us to, in 2014, 15, use social media to make a difference. And we had this really great social media plan. We had all these awesome plans on how we were going to roll it out, and it was going to be like gangbusters, and it was going to be awesome. And we rolled it out, and it sucked. And we didn't raise any money, and the plan wasn't that.
Yeah.
I mean, and so I had all these experiences, and I had committed to starting this Water Boys initiative, kind of bringing in players from different teams. So you have a representative model, because that's a multiplier when it comes to marketing and people that care. Like nobody cares if I do something in St. Louis. You're not going to pick up any fans in Seattle, but we had Russell Wilson involved. We had Kyle Long involved in Chicago. We had Connor Barwin, a whole bunch of players. We've had over like 40 now.
Wow.
But like in the beginning, we didn't have a model for how we were actually going to execute anything. We just had a bunch of guys standing around waiting to do something. And so it's this trial and error process. And you asked about a moment. There are lots of moments. Like for me, it's such a grind and a process to get this thing off the ground. There's moments where I'm inspired all the time still. Like if I go to Tanzania, I have these epiphany moments that I would love to sell to prospective donors. Like there was this one moment where I realized, there was this one visual. It's the accumulation for me of anecdotes, stories. And I think that's what's so important when you're trying to raise money, is to tell those stories. And that's something we're trying to do a better job of, and something that's imperative when you're working halfway across the globe. I can't get people over to Tanzania, but through multimedia and through storytelling, we can bring them in the same way I was brought in. And, I'll tell you one last one. You doubt your work a lot. We do everybody doubts like the effectiveness of what they're doing. Like, hey, am I really making a difference? Am I not doing things correctly? Like, could I be doing a better job? We went over to Tanzania to climb. We climb every year with wounded veterans, athletes, and we do a Conquering Kili climb. So we bring the veteran community in. And we climb with porters, and these guys work their butts off, and they pack your tents up the mountain. They take your food up the mountain.
Yeah. Wow.
I felt like such a spoiled baby. But these guys are awesome, and we try to spend time with them after, the mess tent at night where we'd eat. And usually like just pick their brain, not being, because I'm so curious about people and like different ways of life. And the guys were like, why do y'all do this climb? It's a bunch of big guys. I don't understand. They don't watch football. They don't understand football. And I was like, I explained to him we're here for to implement clean water solutions. And he broke down crying. And I wouldn't usually, this isn't even like a story I would usually tell because it sounds kind of cheesy, but it's 100% true. The guy started crying and was like, I'm so glad that you guys are here doing what you're doing. It's some of the most imperative work that can be done in country here for us. And I just remember thinking like that moment of affirmation by the people we're actually trying to help. Because you go to a village, you drill a well, it's going to provide water for 7,500 people. Everybody there is really excited about it. It's new, it's exciting, it gives them a promise of a better future. But like to hear from somebody who's not on one of those projects, who didn't know who I am, who doesn't know who anybody is in the tent, and to get it affirmed like that, that was a real moment I'll always remember. That gave us a second wind to be able to continue to battle here and continue to raise money.
Wow, it's amazing to hear.
Yeah.
I guess what I'm thinking about is how important storytelling is for you to, make a real impact. And I guess what factor does having real meaningful relationships with the people you're working with in Tanzania have?
I think that's big. And it's, you're going to visit so many well sites. I mean, like now we've done over 100 wells and, like our goal in the beginning, and these are large solar powered wells to give people the background information because it's important to note. There's a lot of hand wells around the world that are really, it's important. It's not a one size fits all solution, but there's a lot of inoperable hand pump wells, and hand pump wells are also really workload intensive. So like you'll have somebody just pumping water all day, and a lot of the women and girls have to deal with that type of burden, and that's better than them walking up to 6 miles to fetch water in 100-degree weather through dangerous terrain,
Yeah.
wildlife, untold terrible kind of like anecdotes of sexual assault, like all types of really sketchy stuff that these women and girls have to deal with. That's time away from school. That's time. Anyways, I say all that to say the hand pumps are great, but I really want the Cadillac of clean water solutions, and that's why we do large solar powered wells. But every step of the way, there are relationships that are being built, because to have an implementing partner that's on the ground and that that has, like, we have Tanzanian nationals that drill our wells. Like, so, it's not like we bring people in from the United States to drill the wells. Like, we have locals drilling the wells. So we not only get to know these people through our partners, but we also get to hear what their concerns are. It's like they really can speak on what the reality is. It's not like a bunch of us going east and being like, this is where we think the well should be. Yeah. This is the dynamic. We have to, at every step of the way, at every fork in the road, interface with people who have a totally different life experience than us. And I think it's really cool to get their input very naturally through the process. So from the geologist that tries to find the groundwater to talking to, a tribesman who can kind of tell you, like, hey, these couple tribes are going to move closer if we put this well here, and that's going to be good for the entire community. Or maybe these two tribes don't get along, and there's a great opportunity to, use water as a solution that can make everybody happier and at ease. Like, we learn so much about not only the people, but the communities at large. And then you go in to actually drill a well. And the cool thing is, we'll take a lot of prospective donors, like football players or veterans that come over, and we'll take them to a well where we haven't had water, a prospective well site. And then we'll take them to a well that we've or a village that we've implemented a clean water solution. And it might be a year, it might be 2 years, but the communities, the stark contrast is so glaring. And it's not like they're putting on a show when we get there. Like, people are like, this has changed our community. And it's because of the impact it can have on women and girls, students, your agriculture. It can have a great effect on uniting people, bringing people together, because it's such a precious resource that often people fight over. And ultimately what it does is lead to less deaths. Waterborne illness can kill you like that in East Africa, and kids under the age of 5, waterborne illness kills more kids than you can imagine over there. It really does. And when we go to a school site, and you see that kids are drinking water out of a creek that's got gasoline film running through it. These are elementary school kids. There's 1,200 kids in this school. We come back the next time and the school looks totally different. And the kids, and every once in a while, because we meet a lot of people at a village or at a school, somebody will be like, I remember you were here 2 years ago. I mean, it's, 6'5" white guy just walking around. Like, it's easy to remember me, but also, it's really cool to make the connection. And a lot of times I will remember people from a well site 2-3 years ago, and it'll just be cool to hear from them. And so I think not only are we implementing through like kind of a relationship based model where everybody knows the area, but also the people that we're helping, it's easy to stay in touch with, and our partners have a really good grip because they're local on what's going on at a well. So it's not just the, hey, how you doing? It's how's the well doing? Can we train you to operate it sustainably, responsibly? And if something breaks, can we be out there relatively quickly, which we can do all those things.
I think it's such a good lesson for, all the people listening at home, or in Duffy Theater, as we're going to, put
Shout
this
out
on
to
for
Duffy
the audience.
Theater.
Understanding the user and their need to make a real impact. I think that's what you touched on. We talk about it all the time at school, but it's really awesome to hear about it in action.
It's you don't want to give people what you think they need. Everybody needs water, but there are intricate details that we have to nail down to make sure it like our solution fits like a glove in that community.
So speaking about the impact you've made, I know you started out with the goal of 32 wells, like you touched on, for each one for each NFL team. Can you give us like a quick status update of where you're at now? And then I guess, sort of the process that it took to go from that initial idea to the impact that you're making now.
Yeah, it's like a big uphill climb because it is so outside the box. This is America where for the most part, like we have access to clean water. You and I are drinking liquid death right now here, but and it's delicious. But we also can turn the tap, and it's an afterthought. In a lot of communities, that's not the case here domestically, and we're starting to figure that out more so. I mean, Flint opened a lot of people's eyes, that sort of thing. But I think it has been an uphill climb because it's so outside the box for us because of the ease that we just described when it comes to getting water. 32 wells was the initial goal, and it was, kind of, I felt like lofty, especially considering the context of what I just laid out. But then I started playing on good football teams.
Yeah.
And like, honestly, St. Louis was such a blessing because I played there for 8 years. That's like the backbone of anything we've done philanthropically. St. Louis, the people of St. Louis they lifted this plane off the ground, like they just literally wheeled it off the ground. And then people in Philly and New England, as we were winning, kind of gave us a gust of wind, and we just took off. And I think that was everybody had such a big role. Like all the fans that supported our team or whatever team I was on or whatever my foundation was doing had such a big role, but it was the people that cheered us on in Super Bowls that helped us shatter that 32. Like I think it was Super Bowl week, maybe the first Super Bowl week we hit that 32. So like when I played in New England, we hit the 32. And then we decided we'd rethink the messaging around like what are our goals like. So we moved to a people serve model, which also gives us a little latitude to work in different, contexts. I mean, like maybe we want to do we do a lot of school solutions. We do a lot of domestic solutions now that aren't all going to be large solar powered wells. So we have the latitude now to kind of to go help where we can.
Yeah.
And we're over 100 wells, as I mentioned. We're about halfway to our goal of 1 million people served. And that feels good because it's just a lot. It's a lot of people. It's also an enormous problem. 1 million people served is going to be a drop in the bucket. No pun intended. I mean, this is a worldwide problem, but it kind of goes back to the same question. It's like, where do you want to start getting work done? Like if you sat around all day and was like, oh, my contribution's not big enough, or maybe I need to work somewhere else, or like this doesn't solve the whole problem, then nobody would get anything done. Our hope is that not only are we making a big impact, but we're also educating people on like the problem at hand. Mm-hmm. And eventually there's a few other of these and it just becomes more prevalent that it's a problem we're talking about.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing to hear. And going back to that, drop in the bucket, like you said, in 2018, you were the Walter Payton NFL Man of the Year.
Yeah.
Which is, an amazing honor.
Yeah. I tried to be a good guy that year.
Yeah. In your speech, you said everyone's actions can be made to seem like a drop in the bucket.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And you said it can be easy to doubt the impact of your work, but work faithfully anyway. So
yeah, I do it all the time. I still do it all the time. Everybody doubts their work, like whether it's at work, like, or you're in business or whatever, like everybody says, I doubt my work in here. Like we all like, are we doing good enough in this podcast? Or like me more so than anybody probably. Cause I can't stop thinking, but I do think that like it can be hard when you kind of are in the foxhole as a foundation and you're trying to be creative. You're trying to grab people's ear. You're trying to move the ball down the field. Like sometimes you don't know if this is just a big deal to you, the work you're doing, or if it's making a big difference on a big scale. And I would say it doesn't really matter because as long as you're doing something that's moving the needle, ultimately the only thing you're going to be judged on is exhausting your potential as an individual, and doing something you're passionate about. And I'm doing both of those things. Like I feel like we are exhausting our potential as a foundation. I am passionate about what we do. And so I'm not going to hang my head if, like I'm not raising as much money as Bill Gates.
Yeah.
So that's the whole thing. Everything's relative. Like a student at your high school might say, well, this is a cool story, but I don't have the resources Chris Long has.
So what would you say to a student at Malvern Prep, St. Anne's Belfield School?
I don't have the resources LeBron James has. So should I just go home? You know what I mean? Like I know that those two, the delta between, your resources as a student and mine and mine and LeBron's, I mean, they're much different, but I'm just using examples of there will always be somebody that's able to do more than you.
Yeah.
That's not how the world changes, is just leaving it to those people.
Mhm.
I think I think the world changes by everybody working faithfully toward, a better tomorrow. And
Yeah.
and everybody has an opportunity to find their niche in doing that. And when somebody tells you that niche isn't good enough, or why don't you do this niche, I also think that's BS. I think there's going to be a lot of people that are going to try to tell you, like, if you have a cause that you're passionate about, well, there's other things more important right now, that sort of thing. Like, well, I'm glad, because there's probably a lot of people doing that thing too.
Yeah.
I think that as long as you're exhausting your potential as an individual and doing something you're passionate about and thinking about other people, I think your work is, it moves the ball downfield. Even if you don't feel it, some days I don't feel I was a Walter Payton Man of the Year, and I'd wake up and be like, I'm not making a difference.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's just self-doubt. That's like what everybody does. And, if you bog yourself down with that, you'll do a lot less good work. So I try to eliminate that and just realize that, like, as long as I'm doing something to move the ball down the field and having faith that you're doing it and he's doing it and he's doing it and she's doing it and she's doing it and she's doing it, and they're doing it over there, I'm not going to, I'm just worried about me. And I'm hoping that everybody's doing the same thing in holding up my end of the bargain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's a really powerful idea that
the only way you can wrap your head around it, because there's too many problems in the world, and no one person can solve them.
I know.
You know?
It's very inspiring to hear, someone just really say that, because I think, we do doubt the impacts we're making, like you said, and it's very easy to be like, well, I'm not going to be able to make
everything's relevant.
How many people, I heard this statistic, I forget the numbers you said, but how many people in the world are sort of plagued by, not having access to clean water?
Hundreds of millions of people, millions and millions of people. I mean, in East Africa alone, like I said, it's like the leading killer of kids is waterborne illness. So you're talking about like vast regions in the world. If you were to color a map where there's clean water crises, I mean, they're everywhere. And then on top of that, there are also people in our country that would shock you that don't have access to clean water. So a lot of the problem with those statistics is it's even more people than you think. A lot of the reporting of, like, we don't even know some of the people that are dealing with not just water shortages, but contamination of their water yet. It's like we're not even positive in this country how bad it is. We're talking about doing some work on Navajo Nation. I mean, it's awful there. It's awful there when it comes to access to clean water, like unimaginable. And it's right in our backyard. So this is not only a widespread problem, but it's also something that's a little closer to home than you think. So it's just, it's kind of nuts, and it's something that, like, we alone can't do. But again, our work isn't just, and this kind of goes back to what I talked to about making a difference. It's kind of like when I donated my salary. It was only to get other people involved. Because $1 million towards a cause is not going to do that much in the grand scheme of things. Get other people involved, inspire other people. And you never know when you're going to be the catalyst for somebody else doing something great. And so, students all the same. You got parents, right? You might have your parents might have some resources. The best way to lead your parents is to go do something you're passionate about. That's, and you never know what connection that parent can make for you that can make your work even more amplified. And so I think it's not just about pragmatically doing the whole thing, because I can't and I won't. When I die, there will still be a clean water crisis. Hopefully not. Maybe we'll figure something out. But it's our work maybe inspiring somebody else, and down the line, that maybe we could eventually make a real difference.
No, it is that whole, domino effect. And I do think that, I've seen, clean access to water become a much, have more focus on it. In the past couple of years, I know 2 people in our community. One of our past speakers we had on, he's, does a ton of stuff. He's a former Green Beret. And he does this whole thing, Horses for Heroes. His name's Father Rick Iannucci.
Probably type A guy.
Well, actually pretty laid back.
Really?
But he was talking about, he does this whole thing, Horses for Heroes. It's a ranch in New Mexico that he runs for veterans, post 9/11 war veterans.
That's really cool.
To sort of retrain them and rehabilitate them after.
Sounds like a peaceful setting
after
for people
PTSD.
that need a little peaceful. Yeah, I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah,
but that's just a
what
perfect
he's
example.
doing right now is with the Navajo Nation, working with students from Villanova University out near us
That's
to build an
cool.
aquifer.
That's cool.
For them. And, he described the water issue. And then another one of our students, one of my best friends, John Romano, shout him out.
Shout out John.
Yeah, shout out John. He's a great kid, but what he's doing with water pollution, he's developing his own patented technology to detect certain pollutants in, people's drinking water.
Wow.
On a coaster. And then,
wow.
Yeah, you'll scan the coaster and then it'll all sort of report that data back.
See, that's when we really start making a
Yeah.
change, because then, you've got people that, you talk about clean water crisis and people starting to talk about it more. Well, I do believe fundamentally that part of people's concern for the rest of the world is rooted in what's going on.
Yep.
People are selfish, and there's a lot of, since Flint and since like a lot, and with climate changing and everything, access to water, droughts, farmers, over farming, like, these are all issues that we have to like grapple with right now. So I think that's really cool. And when you show people that, hey, your water's kind of screwed up and you didn't think so, like, that would really open people's eyes.
Yeah, he tested on the pond in our school's campus and found that there was pollutants that are used in pools that was, going through the groundwater into our school's like sort of ecosystem, and then went to the borough of our school, borough of Malvern, and, got some real change to happen with how people can sort of dump their pools. So
people making decisions in this country need to protect our water.
Yeah.
And that's a way to hold people accountable, is give people information. People have information and they're suddenly like, hey, that pond at my school or my well, like, then you have people that are looking out for their own interests and collectively can make enough noise to make a change. And I think for the most part, that's the only way changes are made. You got to hold people accountable.
Yeah, it's something we take for granted, but obviously the people in Tanzania don't have that opportunity.
Exactly. When you look at the places people in Tanzania are drinking water, it's not like, is something wrong with my well?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, there are animals defecating where I get my water.
Yeah.
The water is brown, and so that's the reality in a lot of parts of America, or in a lot of parts of the world.
Yeah. Well, the work you're doing, the impact you're making, I think it's inspiring for me, and I know for our audience, the work you're doing with Water Boys. Let's shift a little. You talked a bit about conquering Keeley. Can you talk a bit about how you and ex-NFL player, active duty Green Beret, Nate Boyer, worked to launch this program? And I guess you touched on it, but kind of explain how it powers the work you're doing with Water Boys.
Absolutely. I think it's really important because we try to involve as many cross sections of the population as possible. And I think, like, we have a football model. Not everybody's a football fan, so I could have Russell Wilson go into a Safeway in Washington, like, when he's been involved, and say, most people are going to be interested, but maybe there's 20% of people that are like, I don't know who that person is. They'd have to be living under a rock up there. But I think there's a lot of people who don't watch football. So that's why we've tried to incorporate NBA athletes, like mixed martial artists we've had up on the mountain. We've had a ton of influencers. That's why we kind of keep it influencers. And part of influence, the influencer bucket for us, is veterans. I think veterans are, people who have life skills and have experienced life lessons that, can make them very valuable, not only in the workforce, but, philanthropically, for a few reasons. Number one, they're leaders, and number two, their perspective, and their commitment to things that are bigger than them. That's what they're used to.
Yeah.
So, part one of that whole thing is them being leaders. Like, they're immediately going to get people's ears.
Yeah.
And that commitment and that, that team first attitude, the perspective. Nate Boyer, who I cold called because I saw him on SportsCenter, they did some kind of like special on him, being a Green Beret, going and playing at Texas, going and playing for the Seahawks. I thought that all that was remarkable, but the person he was, like, it came across to me that he was that type of guy, the type of guy that we needed to be involved. And also, he had spent a lot of time in Africa, and, he had traveled a great deal, and he had seen, communities that had these very problems. So I cold called him and was like, hey, dude, would you want to be involved in, what we're doing? I have no idea how I want you involved, but I just need people. Like I need people like you. And he hit me back. We talked for like 3 hours the first night. We really hit it off. I love Nate. He's a dear friend. He's also he's somebody that gets stuff done, and he's somebody who leads people. He's charismatic, and he's experienced, and he has perspective. And so we just talked about a way that we get the veteran kind of population involved, so we could bring more people into the cause. And also, like a side effect of that, like fast forwarding, doing Conquering Killy, having a host of veterans every year. With the help of Nate, we recruit all types of vets from everywhere. Those guys and gals are our best advocates, and they're our hardest workers. Like I have veterans who worked with us or climbed the mountain that come back and they're working as hard as me on Water Boys, or Water for Her, or, you know, any of the programs we've had, because this is their comfort zone. Like this is what they do.
Yeah.
Like they've
Help
always
people.
been, they're, you know, part of it is, you talk about the military and going over and there's conflicts and all that sort of thing. But a lot of these guys and gals have to make real inroads and relationships with people in the third world, as we would think of it, and realizing some of the obstacles and impediments that exist. It fits perfectly for us having veterans involved. And Conquering Killy is one of my favorite things we do. We don't raise the most money doing it. We raise money doing it, but it's a very important kind of like, I don't know, morale booster for us.
Yeah.
And it's also important from a human element standpoint. You know, these guys and gals get a lot out of it, and they also get to join a team again. So it's good for us, it's good for them, and it's good for the donors because more donors hear about what we're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really impactful and, you know, inspiring to hear.
Thanks. It's team. It's all. You got to get everybody involved. So, yeah.
So I know you talked about this a bit, but you made waves in 2017 when you donated your entire base salary to promoting programs that funded educational equity and funding scholarships. And then today, as a Citizen Scholarship speaker, your donation of time today has made it possible for a Malvern Prep student with high financial need, high achieving student to have a 4-year scholarship at Malvern.
Pretty darn cool. Good school?
Great school.
Good. They're going to be
Best
happy.
School. Yeah.
But that's you, man. See, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's y'all, it's you, it's, you know, like, this is easy for me. I'm sitting on a couch having a conversation, but it's you guys doing it. It's so impressive what you're doing.
Well, I appreciate it, but it is, you know, the donation of time from speakers like you that make it possible.
I'll give you a whole day. We could do 24 scholarships.
Yeah.
We'll just talk for 24 hours. But no, I think it's amazing what you guys are doing.
So I guess the question is, why do you think educational equality is such a big issue in America? And, you know, obviously I agree it is such a big issue.
Yeah.
Why should people watch and care?
Well, first off, it's a complicated issue. But when you talk about like what we need to do, it's kind of simple. We need every kid to start the same place. And I really believe that. I think, you know, I've worked in so many causes with adults, and I love adults, but kids are a blank slate. You know, kids have, you know, their whole lives in front of them. And I just think so many kids don't have a fair shake. And if you look at like where you're born, where you grow up, where you live in your city, for that to have its challenges anyways, but when you leave your home to go to school, like not only could it be dangerous, could it be unhealthy, it's also like every second that passes, the kids who already have a head start are getting further ahead.
Yeah.
And I was one of the kids that had a head start. You know, like I had a head start. I had everything you could ask for. I had tutors, the whole thing, and I was still not a great student. And I also realized how much school was scary for me. It was intimidating. Like I was intimidated by school. Like school can suck if you're afraid of it. And I just imagine if you know, if I was at a school that didn't give me that head start, like where would I be? And I don't know, when we were talking about you know, society and inequity and whether it was, you know, police reform or mass incarceration or all this stuff that we were talking about, myself, Malcolm, Torrey Smith, you know, like a bunch of guys around the league who are really, really trying to make a big difference. I thought that my best opportunity to make a difference, as a pragmatist, I look at educational equity the same way as I look at the clean water crisis. I think it's the fastest track to us making this place more palatable, like a palatable place to live for everybody. Like, you know, so that when somebody says America's the best country in the world, like you can mean that for everybody. It is for a lot of people, but how can it be the best country in the world if it's not for everybody? And I think it starts with the opportunities that we give or don't give kids. And I think it's totally unfair that depending on the neighborhood you grow up in, you're going to go to school and, you know, there's crossover with the water stuff.
Yeah.
You know, if you're not hydrated in school, if there's not an access point to clean, dependable drinking water, you're going to be even further behind. Like y'all listening at home or in, what was the auditorium?
Duffy Theater.
Duffy. I know you probably got all your little like water bottles that you bring to school, like all that stuff. You don't have to worry about where you get your water. You don't even think about it. You drink a bunch of water all day because it's good for your brain. Because like when I'm on the podcast set, if I'm dehydrated, I'm foggy as hell. I can't even think. Imagine going to school and your water fountain's not even safe. So what kids do, it's compounding. They go get sugary drinks instead. And like a lot of kids in the worst school districts are hammering, you know, orange soda instead of damn, you know, clean water coming out of I mean, that's compounding. And then you have health issues. The kids aren't ready to learn. It's a lot of the same, you know, they're very different school systems and that sort of thing, but dehydration can be terrible for kids. So we've worked, you know, kind of the Venn diagram in our foundation is clean water and it's education. There is a big crossover for us, but also the first thing we did when I donated that money was we were trying to figure out how I wanted to get involved, basically. So we worked in Philly, in Boston, in St. Louis, and in Charlottesville. In Charlottesville, we tried to do like kind of what you guys are doing, trying to diversify the school. Because diversity is not just good for, you know, I think oftentimes we think of it through a lens of like, oh, this is going to be a better opportunity for these 3 kids that are going to get an opportunity to go to St. Anne's Belfield or Malvern. Yeah, that's true. But it's also really a great opportunity for the kids at your school. Yeah. Because that's going to make the kids at your school better. That's going to make the kids at your school more flexible, more, you know, experienced like in the real world. When you get out in the real world, not everybody's the same. Yeah. You know, and I think that's part of the deal. So it's something good for the kids coming in, but it's also good for the kids at your school right now. So we did scholarships in Charlottesville. We did, we worked with Summer Search in Philadelphia, which is more after school experiential, like mentorship kind of stuff. And then we worked with Little Bit Foundation in St. Louis, which is kind of like school age kids. And I learned a lot at Little Bit because I found out how many basic necessities kids are coming to school without in elementary age school kids in some school districts. No toothbrush at home. You know, not a winter coat, no shoes, like shoes with holes in them. Like these are things that it's hard enough to learn the way I described earlier. Now throw in all those challenges. So that year in 2017, not only did we get some good work done, but I also learned how I wanted to work in the space. Like right now we're setting up lockers for kids with essential needs. Like that's one of the main things we're doing in Charlottesville. I realized that I was passionate about that through just going and trying it. And working with Little Bit Foundation in St. Louis, or working with Summer Search, or working with College Bound. That was educational for me in St. Louis because College Bound tries to help kids that like really like, I was a 2nd generation college student in my family. My dad did, you know, both my parents went to college, but I was the first kid that was kind of have to go through that process. And like my dad went on a football scholarship. Had I not had a football scholarship, I would have had a lot of trouble even with parents with means, filling out applications, figuring out like how to do your essays, like all that stuff. It just opens your eyes to holistically what a challenge school is for kids that don't have resources like you and I do from K through 12. And so getting those experiences to span every year in school not only made a great deal of difference and hopefully got people involved, but also instructed me on how I want to work now 5 years later down the line. So another lesson of like, hey, just go do it. Like I wasn't a educational like equity expert in 2000. I'm still not. Like there are boots on the ground people who have given their entire lives to bettering the lives of students. And I'll never be those people. Those are activists. They're people in the space. They're boots on the ground. I'm the megaphone guy. So knowing your role and just getting out and learning and trying and trying stuff. That was what, 2017 was about. And I feel like it was pretty successful because a lot of people got involved, and it also restored a lot of faith in, humanity.
Yeah.
And people were like, okay, I want to make a difference. I know there's a lot of things we're arguing about, but we can all agree that school age kids should have, should start at the same place and have the same resources. I really believe we can work towards that. Then eventually, equity is something we can achieve as a country. We've also worked in literacy spaces. There are direct correlations between reading by 4th grade, the point where you no longer read to learn or learn to read. Now you're reading to learn.
Yeah.
If you don't read by 4th grade, your chances of being incarcerated go up. Your chances of living in poverty go up. All these really easily identifiable metrics that you're like, yep, if we could just teach kids how to read by 4th grade. It seems so simple, but it can make the rest of people's lives easier, and it can make society better in turn, because here we are trying to put out all these fires, trying to get adults to get along and trying to get, improve adults' lives. Well, let's improve kids' lives.
Yeah, the future.
And set this foundation, and that's what we're trying to do.
Well, it's really, really inspiring, and it's amazing to see the work you've done and all these things with water to education to veterans. It's just inspiring.
Thanks. We're trying to cast a wide net and see what happens. And like I said, you start out and you got an idea of what you want to do, but you figure it out eventually what your passions are.
Yeah. And I think your work, we're here at the Greenlight Podcast Studio under the umbrella of Chalk Media, which you started.
You want to stay? Will you hire you?
I'd love to. I think this is it's a pretty cool studio. I like the Super Bowl trophies in the back. Yeah, it's not bad. Replicas? Okay.
Yeah, you got to get them made. Like, they don't just give them to you. Right. I used to think they gave them to you. Imagine me when I saw there's a bill. Like, you got to pay for more Super Bowl trophies.
Well, it's good info for me to know, because I'm definitely going to be on. One. Yeah, when I win one, I'll let you know. I'll get your guy to make one for me.
I got you.
But it's all about, with Chalk Media and the Chris Long Foundation and the work you do, it's all about like empowering athletes to have real voices and make real change. And we've seen that happen recently. What do you think the importance of empowering athletes is, and how do you hope to continue to do so in the future?
I just think this entire culture of athletes, this entire generation of athletes is, with the help of things like social media, with the help of the 24-hour news cycle. Like, it's funny, like, for a long time, people said, I want to get to know athletes better. And now you're getting to know athletes better. And some people are like, I don't want to hear it, stick to sports. Like, well, that's not how this works. The demand was for more athlete. And now you're getting holistically who this person is. So I think it's a really cool time to follow sports. You're also going to hear a lot about what guys are passionate about, guys and gals are passionate about. So I think that's cool too. And I think this entire generation is setting a tone for the ones that follow, is like, hey, because you're an athlete does not mean that you're not a person. I mean, like, you're a person first, and we all experience things and go through things. And whether it's like Lane Johnson talking about mental health, or Malcolm Jenkins talking about criminal justice reform and how that discrepancies in policing, or the way communities are policed, or mass incarceration has affected him and his family because he looks different than me or grew up different than me. We all experience things off the field and off the court. Like, that doesn't disqualify us from talking about it because we're paid a lot of money. And it doesn't make our opinion more valuable than anybody else's, but we have this megaphone. So I think the key is realize that it's okay to be a person and talk about your life as a person and your perspectives as a person. It's also really important to educate yourself. So, like, now the challenge for athletes is going to be like, hey, are you educated on what you're talking about? Are you, just because you can doesn't mean you should. I think what's important is being passionate about what you're going to speak on, but also trying to interface with boots on the ground people like we've tried to do, and let the experts bring you along, and to responsibly talk about whatever you're talking about. There's a difference between opinion and fact. We all have opinions. I think it's really cool what we're doing right now. And I think there's also a big challenge for this generation of athletes and the next, is like to have that conversation with yourself and say, am I ready to be somebody who influences, or am I ready to be an activist? Because those are, like, I'm not an activist. Being an activist is a real job. Like, it's also can be dangerous, and it can be, there can be a lot that can go into it. It can be way more intense than sports. It is more intense than sports. So I think athletes realizing not only like what they're passionate about, being educated on what they're talking about, and then knowing their role in the whole process. And you can be anything you want to be, but like, are you somebody who's a megaphone person? Are you somebody who's trying to influence people? Are you trying to educate people? Are you an activist? I think that's the challenge of this next generation of athlete is like, we're going to have a lot of opportunity to reach people. You know, we're cutting out the middleman.
Yeah.
Like, think about it. Sports media is like really important, and it'll still be viable in some form for long periods of time. But like, there's also a dynamic over the past 10 years where like athletes now have their own social media platforms. Yeah, I can get on Instagram Live after a game. I can tweet after a game. I can control my narrative. So we have more control over the narrative than ever. We are cutting out the middleman. Like, just be, responsible with the point you're getting across. And I think, that's something I strive to do. I've fallen short before, but, I'll always try to, speak on what I'm passionate about.
Yeah, it's inspiring. And I guess, your dad, Howie Long, has had a remarkable career in television broadcasting. After his
62, he's crushing it.
Yeah.
Doesn't look 62.
No, he looks good.
He's about 30.
Yeah. And then you have the podcast.
Yep. Uh-huh.
So I guess, what does that like tell us about how media is changing? And for social entrepreneurs, what should they know about that as they, do decide to become megaphones?
Well, it sucks for my
these
poor
issues?
dad. He has to fly across the country to be on his awesome, high-paying, sports media job at Fox. And I just drive down the street, Now, of course, this job doesn't pay as well.
Yeah.
But I think that perfectly illustrates it. And you said it is like, my dad, 62 years old. I'm 36 years old. We grew up in different generations. We played in different generations. We were paid differently. The leagues are different, but so is the media landscape and the access points.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think what's so interesting is podcasting gives you maximum flexibility. It's awesome. Like, I love being able to just turn it on and go. And I think the pandemic only underscored that further. That like a lot of people are cutting out in-person stuff in the business world, like doing more Zoom, which I think in-person is important. We talked about this.
Yeah.
Like, I love an in-person interview.
Yeah.
Zoom can suck. But I do think that this is going to be a much more agreeable way of life for a lot of people in sports media trying to get into things after football. The upside might not be the same, or rather, podcasting is way more competitive. I'll put it in these terms because everybody has access to podcasting. Yeah. So like, podcasting right now is one of the most competitive,
concentrated,
environments in media history. And so there are a lot of challenges, but like I said, the big one is I don't have to get on a plane. I don't have to wear a suit.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think the format's much more laid back and also nuanced. So like, we can have long form conversations about stuff. When I have a guest on, they don't have to can their answer in a minute. If they really want to get into something, they can go for 2 minutes. And, my dad, his job's awesome and he loves it, but, he's got to wear a suit. The talking points are tighter. And maybe if he's got something he wants to rant about, he can't do it at work. I can do it here.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And I still want to do that stuff. I mean, not what he's doing, but you got to keep the lights on and support the brand of your podcast. So like, I'm going to go up next week and be on ESPN for a day, I think, like, just to keep like that tool sharp.
Yeah.
But I love this. I just love like hanging out, sitting on a couch.
Yeah.
And
it's really cool.
Doing content. It's easy.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Chris, this has been an awesome conversation. I've learned so much. It was so exciting to hear your story, your citizen moment, your advice for aspiring social entrepreneurs, the impact you've made with your donation of time today for the Chris Long Citizen Scholar, providing a high-achieving student with high financial need a 4-year scholarship to Malvern Prep. It's just amazing.
Dude, I like the sound of that. Chris Long Scholarship at Malvern, but it's what you guys are doing. So congratulations on like doing awesome work.
Thank you.
Anybody in the crowd who's a part of it.
Yeah, no, we got a good team of guys, and
I'm
made
excited.
it all possible.
I'm excited for you guys, and I'm excited about, like hearing who goes to Malvern.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, it was amazing to share your story, your citizen moment, and hopefully inspire those in the audience to find their citizen moment.